The alien warship appeared on the scanners like a nightmare made real. It was massive, 3 times larger than the human exploration vessel. Its dark hull bristled with weapons that could turn the small Earthship into dust within seconds. On the bridge of the Meridian, the crew watched their screens with growing fear. Captain Gregory Barnes sat in his command chair, looking at the tactical display. His face was calm, almost peaceful. He studied the alien ship the way someone might study an interesting painting in a museum. There was no panic in his eyes, no sweat on his brow. He simply looked curious. Next to him, Lieutenant Claire Morrison gripped her console. Her knuckles were white. She leaned closer to Barnes and spoke in a low, urgent voice. "Captain, they have locked 14 different weapons on us." 14. Should I raise our shields? We need to do something. Barnes shook his head slowly. No shields. That would be rude. We did enter their space without asking permission first. Morrison stared at him like he had lost his mind. Around the bridge, other crew members exchanged worried glances. The communications officer, a young man named Kyle Patterson, turned from his station. His hands were shaking slightly. "Sir, they are calling us. Should I put them on screen?" "Yes, please do," Barnes said. He stood up and straightened his uniform. He looked like he was preparing for a friendly meeting, not facing possible death. The main screen flickered. An alien face appeared. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with scales that changed color from silver to deep purple. Her eyes were vertical slits of bright amber. She looked powerful and dangerous. Everything about her said she was a warrior, someone who had fought many battles and won them all. Her name was Ambassador Kirith. She spoke, and a computer translated her words into English. "Human ship. You have entered Zarkon territory without permission. You will turn off your engines now. You will prepare to be boarded. If you resist, we will destroy you immediately." Her voice was cold and hard. This was not a request. It was a command. She expected to be obeyed without question. Barnes smiled. It was a warm, genuine smile, the kind of smile you give to a friend. He looked relaxed and friendly. "Ambassador Kirith, I presume? My name is Captain Gregory Barnes. I command this Earth ship called the Meridian. Please accept my apology for entering your space. We did not know anyone lived here. Our sensors did not detect your settlements." This was an honest mistake. Kirith's scales rippled. She looked confused for a moment. This was not the response she expected. Most species begged or threatened or panicked when facing her warship. This human was apologizing like he had accidentally walked into the wrong room. "You will obey our orders, human." "This is not a discussion," she said, her voice harder now. "Of course," Barnes replied, still smiling. "We will turn off our main engines and wait for you to board us. That is no problem. However, I should tell you something. Our ship sent an automatic distress signal when we detected your weapons. It is standard procedure. That signal will reach Earth Command in about 6 weeks. They will know where we are and what happened." "I thought you should know this." Something changed in Kirith's expression. For just a second, Barnes saw worry cross her face. She hid it quickly, but it had been there. "You are lying," she said, but her voice held a question. "You can check our transmission records if you like," Barnes offered. "We are explorers, Ambassador. We come in peace. We have procedures to protect that peace even when first contact does not go well. Would you like to talk over this communication channel? Or would you prefer to come aboard our ship? We have excellent coffee, real beans from Earth." On the Meridian's bridge, Morrison's eyes went wide. Behind her, the tactical officer looked like he wanted to grab the captain and shake him. The entire crew seemed to stop breathing. Kirith stared at Barnes for a long time. She had been a military ambassador for many years. She had made first contact with hundreds of different species. She had seen every possible reaction to overwhelming force. She had seen fear. She had seen anger. She had seen desperate bargaining. She had seen religious fervor. She had seen resignation and panic and rage. She had never seen this. This human stood before certain death as calmly as if they were having tea. Her sensors showed his heart rate was normal. There were no stress chemicals in his scent. His voice did not shake. He was not pretending to be calm. He genuinely was calm. The question came out before she could stop herself. "Why are you not afraid, human?" This time her voice was not threatening. It was genuinely curious. Barnes tilted his head slightly. He seemed to think about the question seriously. "Because fear is only useful if it can change the outcome, Ambassador. Can my fear stop you from destroying my ship?" "No," she admitted. "Then why waste my energy being afraid? Also, I have found that most intelligent beings prefer peace over violence when given a real choice. I believe you are intelligent. I am betting that you prefer peace. Am I wrong? Silence filled the space between the two ships. Kirith felt something strange. It was not fear exactly. It was more like uncertainty. This human had walked into her trap. He was completely at her mercy. Yet somehow he had turned this into a conversation between equals. He was not begging. He was not threatening. He was simply talking to her like a reasonable person talks to another reasonable person. It was deeply unsettling. "Stand by," she said finally. She cut the transmission. The moment the screen went dark, Morrison spun around to face Barnes. "Sir, what are you doing? You just invited a hostile alien to drink coffee while they have guns pointed at us. Have you lost your mind?" Barnes sat back down in his chair. He looked completely relaxed. "Lieutenant, fear spreads like a disease, but so does calm. I chose to show the behavior I want to see in return. Now let us prepare some coffee. I have a feeling we are going to need it. And Morrison, tell the crew to relax. Getting tense will not help anything." Morrison shook her head but followed his orders. She had served under Barnes for 3 years. She had learned that his strange methods usually worked even when they seemed crazy. She just hoped this was one of those times. On the alien warship, Kirith stared at the spot where the human's face had been. Her crew waited for orders. They expected her to command the destruction of the human vessel. That was standard procedure. Unknown ships that entered their territory without permission were eliminated. It was simple. It was clean. It was how things had always been done. But something made her hesitate. That human's calm was not natural. No species should be that relaxed when facing death. Either he was insane or he knew something she did not. And if he knew something, she needed to find out what it was before she made any decisions. "Prepare a boarding party," she ordered. "I am going to their ship." Her second-in-command looked surprised. "Ambassador, that could be dangerous. We should just destroy them." "No," Kirith said slowly. "Not yet. I need to understand what we are dealing with. That human is either very stupid or very dangerous. I need to know which one." Deep down, she suspected she already knew the answer, and that suspicion made her blood run cold. 20 minutes passed. The alien shuttle connected to the Meridian's airlock with a loud metallic sound that echoed through the ship's corridors. Captain Barnes stood in the docking bay with Lieutenant Morrison and 2 security officers. All of them were unarmed. Barnes had ordered it that way. Morrison had argued about this decision. "Sir, we should at least carry sidearms." "For protection." Barnes had shaken his head. "Weapons would only make them nervous. Nervous aliens with guns rarely lead to good conversations." Now they waited. The airlock door hissed as pressure equalized. Then it slid open. Ambassador Kirith stepped through, followed by 4 Zarkon soldiers. Each soldier was nearly 8 feet tall. Their scales were darker than Kirith's, a deep purple that looked almost black. They wore armor that seemed ceremonial but also functional. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Barnes stepped forward. He held out his hand in the traditional human greeting. Kirith stared at the outstretched hand. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "It is called a handshake," Barnes explained. His voice was friendly and patient. "It is a gesture of peace. No weapons, see? Just skin touching skin, or in this case, skin touching scales." After a moment of hesitation, Kirith reached out. She took his hand. Her grip was incredibly strong enough to crush human bones, but Barnes met her grip with firm confidence. When they released hands, he gestured toward the corridor. "Welcome aboard the Meridian. The conference room is this way. I adjusted the environmental controls to match your preferred temperature and humidity. I hope you find it comfortable." Kirith's scales changed color slightly. During her shuttle ride, she had studied the Meridian's design. This was a scout ship. It was built for exploration, not fighting. It was fast but fragile. Her warship could destroy it easily. Yet this captain had taken the time to make the environment comfortable for her. It suggested either remarkable confidence or remarkable stupidity. She was beginning to think it was confidence. The conference room was small but pleasant. A table stood in the center with chairs designed to accommodate different body types. On the table sat a pot of steaming coffee and several cups. There were also small cakes arranged on a plate. "Please sit down," Barnes said. "The coffee might taste strange to you, but I find it helps during long discussions. The cakes are synthetic, I am afraid. Our food machines made them. but they are not bad. Kirith sat slowly. Her guards moved to stand by the door. She watched Barnes pour coffee for himself and Morrison. Then he offered the pot to her. "No," she said firmly. "I will not drink anything you offer until I understand what is happening here." "That is fair," Barnes said. He set down the pot and took a sip from his own cup. He looked genuinely pleased by the taste. "So, Ambassador, let us talk about the situation. You caught us in your territory. We admit this freely. What would you like to happen next?" "What I want," Kirith said slowly, her voice dangerous, "is to understand what kind of species walks into a trap and then offers coffee to their captors." "Ah," Barnes nodded. "That is a fair question. Tell me, Ambassador, how many times have you made first contact with a new species?" 47 times, she answered immediately. "That is impressive. And how many of those species are still friendly with the Zarkon?" Kirith did not answer. Her silence said everything. Barnes leaned back in his chair. "Humanity has a saying. You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. It means that kindness often works better than hostility. We have encountered 17 other species since we left Earth. All 17 are our allies now, not our servants, not conquered people. They are our allies, our trading partners, our friends." "Impossible," one of the guards said. His voice was rough and disbelieving. "No species is that weak." Barnes's smile stayed on his face, but something changed in his eyes. Something cold and old appeared there. Even Kirith, who had fought in many battles, felt a sudden chill of warning. "Oh, we are not weak," Barnes said softly. "We are just not stupid. Every species humanity has met could hurt us. Some could have destroyed us completely. But violence is expensive. It costs resources and it costs opportunities. Why fight when you can trade? Why conquer when you can cooperate? Why make enemies when you can make friends?" He paused to take another sip of coffee. "Of course, this approach requires certain things. It requires that the other side can think beyond immediate gain. It requires wisdom, not just strength. It requires understanding that the universe is very large, and making friends is usually smarter than making enemies or corpses." Kirith felt her blood run cold. Not from fear exactly, but from sudden understanding. This human was not offering peace because he was weak. He was offering peace because he was giving her a choice, and that choice carried a message so profound she could barely process it. If humanity could afford to be this generous, this calm, this confident when facing her weapons, what did that say about their real capabilities? "Tell me about Earth," she said suddenly. "Tell me about your homeworld." Barnes's expression became softer. "Earth is beautiful, Ambassador. It has deserts and jungles. It has mountains and oceans. It has frozen poles and tropical areas. But more than that, Earth is dangerous. It is a world that has tried to kill us in every way possible. Predators hunted us. Diseases killed us. Natural disasters destroyed our homes. Ice ages, droughts, floods. For millions of years, Earth tried to eliminate our ancestors." He set down his cup carefully. "We survived anyway. Not because we were the strongest. We were not. Not because we were the fastest or had the best natural weapons. We did not. We survived because we could adapt. Because we could work together. Because we could think our way around problems we could not fight through. And because when we absolutely had to, we could be more ruthless than anything else on the planet." The conference room was completely silent. Even the guards had stopped moving. "But here is the important thing, Ambassador. We learned something valuable. The same ability to adapt that let us survive on Earth lets us choose how we interact with the universe. We can be predators or partners. We can be warriors or traitors. We can be conquerors or friends. And we have discovered that being friends is almost always more profitable in the long run." Kirith stood up suddenly. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Her guards tensed immediately, their hands moving toward their weapons. Barnes remained seated. He was perfectly calm. His hands stayed visible on the table. "Show me," she demanded. "Show me your ship. Your weapons. Your technology. I need to see what I'm dealing with." Barnes stood slowly. "Of course. Lieutenant Morrison, would you please give Ambassador Kirith and her guards a complete tour? Full access. She can see whatever she wants to see." Morrison's professional expression slipped for just a moment. She looked shocked. Full access meant everything. The weapons, the engines, the communication systems. It was either the most trusting thing possible or the most arrogant. "This way, Ambassador," Morrison said, recovering her composure. The tour lasted 2 hours. Kirith examined every system. She asked many questions. Morrison answered each one with professional detail. What Kirith discovered both relieved her and terrified her. The Meridian was exactly what it appeared to be. A scout ship, fast and efficient, built for exploration rather than war. Its weapons were defensive. Its shields were moderate. In a direct fight with her battle cruiser, it would last maybe 3 minutes before being destroyed. But that was not what terrified her. What terrified her was the efficiency. Everything was automated. Everything was compact and elegant. Every system was designed with ruthless practicality. This was not a warship, but it was built with the same philosophy as a warship. Every part was optimized. Every system had backups. Every design choice was made for maximum effectiveness. If this was their exploration ship, what did their warships look like? The thought made her scales ripple with involuntary fear. They returned to the conference room. Barnes was still there, reading something on a small electronic pad. He looked up when they entered. His expression showed curiosity. "Did you see everything you needed to see?" he asked. "No," Kirith said. She sat down heavily in her chair. This time she poured herself a cup of coffee. It tasted bitter and strange, but she barely noticed. Her mind was too busy processing what she had learned. "Captain Barnes, I need you to answer a question. I need you to be honest." "I will do my best," Barnes said. "If I give the order right now to destroy your ship, what happens?" Barnes set down his electronic pad. His expression became serious. All the warmth left his face. "In the short term, my ship is destroyed. Everyone on board dies. That is 43 lives, Ambassador. 43 people with families, people with dreams and hopes and fears, all gone in an instant." He paused for a moment. "In the medium term, our distress signal reaches Earth Command in 6 weeks. They will investigate. They will find your people. They will ask questions. And in the long term?" Kirith asked quietly. Barnes looked directly into her eyes. When he spoke, his voice was not threatening. It was simply factual, like a teacher explaining a basic truth. "In the long term, Ambassador, you will discover whether humanity's love of peace comes from wisdom or from mercy. Because make no mistake, we are capable of war. We are very good at it. We have been practicing on each other for 10,000 years. We have turned it into an art form. We understand logistics, strategy, propaganda, total war, limited war, guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, and many other types of combat that you probably do not have words for." He stood up and walked to the window that showed the stars. "But here is what we also learned from those 10,000 years of fighting. War is waste. It destroys resources. It destroys knowledge. It destroys potential. It is the last choice of people who cannot think of better solutions. So we choose peace whenever we can, not because we are weak. We choose peace because we are efficient. Because we have done the calculations and realized that cooperation gives better results than conquest." He turned back to face her. "But if you force us into war, Ambassador, we will fight that war with the same efficiency we bring to everything else, and you will lose. Not because you are weak. You will lose because we have had more practice at being predators than you can imagine. The difference is we evolved past needing to prove it." Kirith felt something inside her change. It was like watching a gentle plant-eating animal suddenly reveal itself as a hunting creature that had simply chosen not to hunt. The realization was both humbling and strangely reassuring. "You are giving us a choice," she said slowly, understanding finally dawning. "I am offering you the same choice we have offered everyone else we have met. Trade with us. Talk with us. Learn from us and let us learn from you. Build something together instead of destroying each other. Or do not, it is genuinely your choice. But understand that every choice has consequences." One of Kirith's guards shifted uncomfortably. "Ambassador, this must be a trick. No species offers peace when they are weak." "That is exactly the point," Kirith said quietly. "He is not weak. He never was. We just could not see it before." She stood up, facing Barnes directly. Her full height was impressive, but somehow Barnes did not seem small. "Captain, I need to speak with my government. This decision is too important for me to make alone." "Of course," Barnes said. "Take all the time you need. We are not going anywhere." Kirith and her guards returned to their shuttle. As the airlock door closed behind them, Morrison turned to Barnes. "Sir, do you really think they will choose peace?" Barnes walked back to his chair and sat down. He looked tired suddenly. "I think they are intelligent. Intelligence usually recognizes when cooperation is more beneficial than conflict. But I could be wrong. We will find out soon enough." "And if you are wrong?" Morrison asked. Barnes was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "If I'm wrong, we die. But we die having given them every chance to choose differently. That matters." On the Zarkon battlecruiser, Kirith immediately called for an emergency meeting with the High Council. She stood in her private quarters, looking at the stars while she waited for the connection. Her mind kept replaying the conversation with Barnes. She had met hundreds of species. She had seen fear. She had seen anger. She had seen desperation. But she had never met anyone quite like Captain Barnes. He had faced death with the calmness of someone who had already made peace with it. More than that, he had turned a situation where he had no power into a negotiation between equals. That took remarkable confidence. Oh, remarkable stupidity. She no longer thought it was stupidity. The communication screen lit up. The faces of the 7 members of the High Council appeared. They were the supreme rulers of the Zarkon Empire. Each one had earned their position through combat and strategic brilliance. Elder Vothkar spoke first. He was the oldest and most experienced warrior among them. His scales were pale with age, but his eyes were still sharp. "Ambassador Kirith, your report was concerning. Explain to us why we should not simply destroy this human vessel and be done with it." Kirith chose her words carefully. "Elders, I believe that would be a mistake. The humans are not what they appear. Their ship is weak, yes, but the species is not." Another elder, Shiraka, made a dismissive gesture. She was younger and more aggressive. "One small ship makes you nervous? This is not like you, Kirith." "It is not the ship," Kirith said. "It is the captain. It is their entire approach. They have protocols for first contact. They sent distress signals. They offered peace while surrounded by our weapons. They showed no fear. None. My sensors confirmed it. This was not bravado. It was genuine calm." "Perhaps they are simply foolish," Shiraka suggested. "No," Kirith said firmly. "They are efficient. I saw their ship. Every system is optimized. They think in terms of resource management and strategic advantage. And they claim to have peaceful relations with 17 other species, 17 elders, all allies, not conquered territories, allies." A younger elder named Vorshan leaned forward. She had risen through the ranks through cleverness rather than just combat skill. "What are you suggesting, Ambassador?" "I am suggesting that we are dealing with a species that has mastered something we have not. They have learned how to turn potential enemies into friends, and they are offering us the same opportunity. I think we should accept." "Unacceptable," Shiraka said immediately. "We do not negotiate with trespassers. We eliminate them. That is our way. Our way has given us an empire," Kirith acknowledged, "but it has also given us no friends. Only enemies and conquered people who hate us. The humans are offering something different, real partnership. And if we refuse, if we destroy that ship, their fleet will come eventually, and I believe we will regret that." The council chamber fell silent. The elders looked at each other, communicating with small gestures and changes in scale color. Finally, Vothkar spoke. "Ambassador Kirith, you have never steered us wrong before. Your judgment in first contact situations is unmatched. We will trust it now. Return to the human ship. Tell them we accept their offer, but make it clear that we are watching. If this is a deception, they will pay dearly for it." Kirith felt relief wash over her. "Yes, Elder. I will make that clear." As the communication ended, Kirith stood alone in her quarters. She poured herself a small amount of the coffee Barnes had given her. She had taken some back to analyze it. It still tasted strange, but she was starting to understand why humans liked it. Tomorrow she would return to the Meridian. Tomorrow the Zarkon Empire would take its first step toward something it had never had before. A genuine alliance built on mutual respect rather than fear. She hoped Barnes was right. She hoped humanity was as wise as they seemed. Because if they were not, if this was all an elaborate trap, the consequences would be terrible for both species. But somehow she did not think it was a trap. Captain Barnes had looked her in the eyes and told her the simple truth. Humans preferred peace because it was more efficient than war, not because they could not fight, but because they chose not to. That, she realized, was the most dangerous kind of enemy to have. The kind that did not need to prove their strength, and the most valuable kind of friend to gain. The next morning, Ambassador Kirith returned to the Meridian. This time the atmosphere was different. There was no tension in the air. The human crew seemed more relaxed. Barnes met her at the airlock with the same warm smile. "Ambassador, welcome back. I hope you had a productive conversation with your leaders." I did, Kirith said. The High Council has decided to accept your offer of peace and cultural exchange. However, I must be clear. We will be watching. If this proves to be a deception, there will be serious consequences. Barnes nodded seriously. That is fair and understandable. We would do the same in your position. Trust must be earned, not demanded. Shall we begin with the formal negotiations? They returned to the conference room. This time, other human officers joined them. Morrison was there, along with the ship's science officer, a woman named Linda Chen and the cultural specialist, a man named Peter King. On Kirith's side, she had brought her senior diplomatic aide and a military strategist. The negotiations began slowly. Both sides were careful. They discussed boundaries and trading routes. They talked about technology exchange and cultural programs. They established protocols for future meetings. Hours passed. The coffee pot was refilled several times. Kirith found herself actually enjoying the strange, bitter drink. She also found herself genuinely liking these humans. They were direct but respectful. They listened carefully. They made reasonable compromises. During a break, Linda Chen approached Kirith. The science officer was young and enthusiastic. Ambassador, I wanted to ask about your ship's propulsion system. Our scans showed an interesting energy signature. Is it based on quantum field manipulation? Kirith's scales rippled with surprise. You could detect that from your scans? That is impressive. Yes, our drives use quantum field compression. It allows for faster-than-light travel with less energy consumption. Fascinating, Chen said, her eyes bright with interest. We use a different approach, but the underlying principles might be similar. Would you be interested in a technical exchange? I think both our species could benefit. This was exactly what Barnes had promised. Real cooperation. Real interest in mutual benefit. Kirith felt her remaining doubts begin to fade. I would need to get approval from my government, she said. But personally, I think that would be valuable. Over the next several days, a framework for cooperation emerged. The humans would establish a small embassy in Zarkon space. The Zarkon would send diplomats to meet with human authorities. There would be cultural exchanges, scientific collaborations, and carefully monitored trade agreements. Throughout it all, Barnes remained patient and professional. He never pushed too hard. He never demanded more than seemed reasonable. He simply worked toward mutual understanding. On the 5th day, during a private conversation, Kirith finally asked the question that had been bothering her. Captain Barnes, you took a huge risk when you first contacted us. What if my government had ordered your destruction? What if I had been less reasonable? Barnes looked out the viewport at the stars. Then we would have died. But we would have died trying to build a bridge instead of a wall. That matters to us, but why? Kirith pressed. Why take that risk? Barnes turned to face her. Because humanity learned something important, Ambassador. We learned it the hard way. Through countless wars and disasters, we learned that the future belongs to those who can cooperate, not those who can conquer. Every war we fought on Earth taught us that lesson. Every time we chose violence over dialogue, we paid a terrible price. He sat down, gesturing for her to do the same. We had a period in our history called the Cold War. 2 massive powers on Earth built enough weapons to destroy all life on the planet. They came very close to using them. Very close, but they did not. Do you know why? Kirith shook her head. Because at the last moment, people on both sides chose communication over destruction. They talked. They negotiated. They found ways to step back from the edge. And eventually, they became partners instead of enemies. That taught us something profound. No matter how different we are, no matter how much we fear each other, talking is almost always better than fighting. But you must have enemies, Kirith said. Surely not every species accepted your offer of peace. We have encountered resistance, Barnes admitted. There was one species, the Kreth, who attacked us without warning. They destroyed 2 of our colony ships. Hundreds of lives lost. What did you do? Kirith asked, genuinely curious. We defended ourselves. We pushed them back from our territory. We made it very clear that attacking humans had consequences, but we did not invade their space. We did not try to destroy them. Instead, we established a border and made it known that we would talk whenever they were ready. It took 3 years, but eventually their government changed. The new leaders reached out. Now the Kreth are our trading partners. Not our closest allies, but we have peaceful relations. Kirith absorbed this information. It was so different from the Zarkon way. When the Zarkon faced resistance, they crushed it. They dominated. They conquered. It had made them powerful, but it had also made them isolated. Your way requires patience, she observed. Yes, Barnes agreed. It requires patience. It requires giving people the chance to change their minds. It requires believing that most beings, when given a real choice, will choose cooperation over conflict. But it works. It works far more often than the alternative. A communication alert interrupted them. Morrison's voice came through the ship's intercom. Captain, we are receiving a transmission from Earth Command. They have received our situation report. They are sending a diplomatic vessel to formalize the treaty with the Zarkon. Estimated arrival 3 weeks. Excellent, Barnes said. Thank you, Lieutenant. He turned back to Kirith. It seems Earth Command is taking this seriously. They are sending proper diplomats. People trained for this work. I am just a ship captain who got lucky. You are more than just lucky, Kirith said. You saw a dangerous situation and turned it into an opportunity. That takes skill and courage, Barnes smiled. Or stupidity. Sometimes it is hard to tell the difference. Later that evening, Kirith stood on the observation deck of her battlecruiser. The Meridian hung in space nearby, small but somehow not insignificant. She had spent a week with these humans. A week that had changed her understanding of the galaxy. Her second-in-command joined her at the viewport. His name was Torval, and he had served with her for many years. Ambassador, the crew is confused. We captured a trespasser, but now we are negotiating with them as equals. Some are questioning the wisdom of this. I understand their confusion, Kirith said. This is new for all of us. But Torval, I've met many species in my career. I have seen strong species and weak species, smart species and foolish ones. But I have never met a species quite like the humans. What makes them so special? Torval asked. They understand something we do not. They understand that true power is not just the ability to destroy. True power is the ability to choose not to destroy. They could be conquerors. They have the mindset for it. The efficiency, the ruthlessness when necessary, but they choose cooperation instead. Not because they are weak, but because they are wise. She turned to face her second-in-command. Tell the crew this. We have a chance to learn from these humans. We have a chance to become something more than conquerors. We have a chance to have real allies instead of just conquered subjects. That is valuable. That is worth exploring, Torval nodded slowly. And if it is a trap, if they are deceiving us, then we will deal with it, Kirith said firmly. We are not fools. We will watch them carefully. We will verify everything they tell us. But Torval, I do not think it is a trap. I think they mean exactly what they say. And that is somehow more frightening than any weapon they could point at us. The two Zarkons stood in silence, watching the human ship. Neither of them knew it yet, but this moment would be remembered in history. The moment when the Zarkon Empire took its first real step toward becoming part of a larger community. The moment when conquest gave way to cooperation. And it had all started because one human captain had refused to be afraid. Because he had offered coffee instead of threats. Because he had believed that even strangers could become friends if given the chance. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply choosing kindness over violence. Captain Barnes had understood that. How slowly the Zarkon were beginning to understand it too. 3 months passed. The diplomatic vessel from Earth arrived as promised. It was much larger than the Meridian, a proper ship designed for formal negotiations and long-term missions. Ambassador Helen Carter came aboard the Meridian to meet with Captain Barnes before the formal ceremonies began. Carter was an older woman with gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She had negotiated treaties with 6 different alien species. She knew her work well. Captain Barnes, she said, shaking his hand warmly, I have read your reports. What you accomplished here is remarkable. First contact situations rarely go this smoothly. I was lucky, Barnes said modestly. Ambassador Kirith is reasonable and wise. She saw the value in cooperation. Perhaps, Carter said, but luck only takes you so far. You made good choices. You showed respect without showing weakness. You offered partnership without demanding it. That takes skill. She looked out at the Zarkon battlecruiser through the viewport. Tell me honestly, Captain, do you trust them? Barnes considered the question carefully. I trust that they are rational. I trust that they can see the benefits of cooperation. Do I trust them completely? Not yet, trust takes time. But I believe we are building something real here. Carter nodded. Good answer. Trust should be earned, not assumed. Now let us go meet this Ambassador Kirith. I am curious to meet the Zarkon who chose peace over conquest. The formal treaty signing took place on neutral ground, a space station that the Zarkon had designated for diplomatic purposes. It was an old military outpost that had been converted for peaceful use. The gesture was symbolic and appreciated by the human delegation. The ceremony was attended by officials from both sides. Elder Vothkar himself came to represent the Zarkon High Council. He was ancient and imposing, his pale scales marked with the scars of countless battles, but when he spoke his voice carried wisdom rather than aggression. Humans, he said, addressing the assembled crowd. For centuries the Zarkon have expanded through strength. We conquered. We dominated. We believed that power was the only language the universe understood. But Ambassador Kirith has shown us something different. She has shown us that there is strength in partnership as well as in domination. He looked directly at Barnes, who stood near Ambassador Carter. Captain Barnes, you walked into our weapons with only words as your shield. You offered friendship when most species would have offered surrender or defiance. You have taught us that courage comes in many forms. For this, the Zarkon honor you. The ceremony continued with speeches and formal declarations. The treaty was signed with both digital signatures and traditional physical documents. There were photographs and recordings. Everything was documented for history. After the formal proceedings, there was a reception. Humans and Zarkon mingled awkwardly at first, then with growing comfort. Scientists compared notes. Military officers discussed tactics with surprising mutual respect. Cultural specialists asked endless questions. Barnes found himself standing with Kirith on a balcony overlooking the station's main hangar. Below them, human and Zarkon ships sat side by side. It was a strange sight, but somehow right. I never thought I would see this, Kirith said quietly. 3 months ago, I was ready to destroy your ship. Now we are allies. The galaxy is full of surprises, Barnes replied. Most of them good if you give them a chance. Captain Barnes, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Were you really not afraid when we first met? My sensors said you were calm. But I have wondered if perhaps you were just very good at hiding your fear. Barnes smiled. I was nervous, he admitted. But not afraid in the way you mean. I was nervous about making mistakes, about saying the wrong thing. But afraid of dying? No. Death is inevitable for all of us eventually. What matters is what we do with the time we have. I chose to try building a bridge. If I had died doing that, at least I would have died trying to make the universe a little bit better. Kirith was quiet for a moment. Then she said, humans are strange. You think about death differently than we do. For Zarkon, death in battle is honorable, but death in negotiation seems wasteful. I disagree, Barnes said gently. If I had died trying to make peace, that would have been the most honorable death possible. Because it would have been in service of something larger than myself. It would have been trying to create a future where fewer people need to die in battle at all. He turned to face her fully. Ambassador, humanity learned something important. We learned that the greatest warriors are not the ones who win the most fights. The greatest warriors are the ones who prevent fights from happening in the first place. That is true strength. That is true courage. Kirith felt her scales ripple in the way that indicated deep thought. This human continued to challenge everything she had believed about strength and power. I think, she said slowly, that the Zarkon have much to learn from humanity, and I hope that you will have patience with us as we learn. We will, Barnes promised, just as I hope you will be patient with us. We are not perfect. We make mistakes, but we try to learn from them. Elder Vothkar joined them on the balcony. He carried a cup of coffee, prepared with the Zarkon spices that Barnes had learned to tolerate, if not enjoy. Captain Barnes, the elder said, I wanted to speak with you privately. I have lived a long time. I have fought in hundreds of battles. I have conquered worlds. But today I learned that perhaps the greatest conquest is conquering one's own fear and prejudice. That is wise, Elder, Barnes said respectfully. I have a question for you, Vothkar continued. If Ambassador Kirith had given the order to destroy your ship, what would you have done in your final moments? Barnes did not hesitate. I would have sent a final message to my crew. I would have told them that they served with honor, that they represented the best of humanity, and I would have hoped that even in death we might have planted a seed of doubt in your minds, a question about whether violence was truly the only way. Vothkar's scales changed color in a way that Barnes had learned, indicated deep respect. You would have died trying to change our minds, the elder said. That is remarkable. And it worked, Not through your death, thankfully, but through your willingness to die for your principles. That made us think. That made us question. That is why we are here today. He raised his cup in what Barnes recognized as a Zarkon gesture of respect. To humans, Bothkar said, who taught us that the strongest weapon is sometimes choosing not to fight. Barnes raised his own cup. To the Zarkon, who had the wisdom to recognize that strength and cooperation are not opposites. They drank together, three individuals from two very different species, building something that neither could have built alone. Later that evening, Barnes stood alone on the observation deck of the Meridian. His ship would be leaving soon, heading back to Earth for reassignment. His first contact mission was complete. He had done what he set out to do and more. Lieutenant Morrison joined him. She had served with him through the entire encounter with the Zarkon. "Sir, I owe you an apology," she said. "When you first invited Kirith aboard for coffee, I thought you had lost your mind." "I was wrong." "You knew exactly what you were doing," Barnes smiled. "I appreciate that, Lieutenant. But honestly, I was not entirely sure it would work. I just believed it was worth trying." "Why?" Morrison asked. "Why take that risk?" "Because the alternative was guaranteed conflict," Barnes replied. "Fear leads to aggression. Aggression leads to violence. Violence leads to more violence. Someone has to break that cycle. Someone has to choose differently. Why not us? Why not now?" Morrison nodded slowly. "I understand now. You were not being reckless. You were being strategic. Long-term strategic." "Exactly," Barnes said. "The Zarkon are powerful. They could have been dangerous enemies. Instead, they are becoming valuable allies. That is worth any risk." They stood together in comfortable silence watching the stars. Behind them, the door opened. Ambassador Carter entered. "Captain Barnes, I wanted to inform you that Earth Command is very pleased with your work here. They are offering you a promotion and a new assignment. You would command the first permanent diplomatic mission to the Zarkon Empire." Barnes turned, surprised. "That is very generous, but I am a ship captain, not a diplomat." "You are whatever you need to be," Carter replied. "And right now, we need someone who understands both the Zarkon and humanity. Someone who can continue building this relationship. Will you accept?" Barnes looked back out at the stars. He thought about Kirith and Elder Vothkar. He thought about all the possibilities that this new alliance could bring. He thought about the future that was just beginning. "Yes," he said finally. "I accept. Let us see what we can build together." And so the story that began with a question continued into an uncertain but hopeful future. A future where two very different species learn to see past their differences and work toward common goals. A future built not on fear or domination but on mutual respect and shared dreams. It had all started with one simple choice. Captain Barnes had chosen not to be afraid. He had chosen to offer friendship instead of hostility. He had chosen to believe that even strangers could become allies. And that choice had changed everything. 6 months after the treaty signing, the Earth Embassy on the Zarkon homeworld was fully operational. Captain Barnes, now Ambassador Barnes, stood in his new office looking out at the alien cityscape. The architecture was beautiful in its own way, all sharp angles and crystalline structures that caught the light of their purple sun. His assistant, a young diplomat named Sarah Wright, knocked on his door. "Ambassador, you have a visitor. Ambassador Kirith is here to see you." "Send her in, please," Barnes said with a smile. Kirith entered carrying a datapad and, surprisingly, 2 cups of coffee. She had become quite fond of the human beverage, though she still added her traditional spices to it. "Good morning, Ambassador Barnes," she said, handing him one of the cups. "I thought we could discuss the upcoming cultural exchange program." "Thank you," Barnes said, accepting the coffee. "Please sit down. What is on your mind?" Kirith settled into the chair that had been specially designed for Zarkon physiology. "I wanted to discuss something more personal first, if you do not mind." "Of course. I have been thinking about our first meeting," she said. "About your answer when I asked why you were not afraid. Your response changed everything for me. It changed everything for my people." Barnes nodded. It was an honest answer. Fear without purpose is just wasted energy. "But it was more than that," Kirith insisted. "You showed me that strength is not about dominating others. Strength is about choosing your response to any situation. You chose calm when most would choose panic. You chose diplomacy when most would choose aggression. That is a kind of strength the Zarkon never understood before." She set down her datapad and looked directly at him. I need to tell you something. After our first meeting, I researched human history extensively. I learned about your wars, your conflicts, your capacity for violence, and I realized something that frightened me deeply. What was that? Barnes asked gently. Humans are not peaceful because you are weak. You are peaceful because you understand the true cost of war. You have seen what happens when violence becomes the default answer. You have experienced the horror of total war, and you chose to step back from that edge. The Zarkon have never had to make that choice. We have always been the strongest. We never learned when to stop. Barnes was quiet for a moment. Then he said, That is very insightful, Ambassador. You are right. Humanity's love of peace comes from understanding what happens when peace fails. We are not morally superior. We are just experienced in ways we wish we were not. But you learned, Kirith said. That is what matters. You learned and you changed. Now you are teaching us. Already I see changes in Zarkon society. There are debates in the High Council about our approach to conquest. Some elders are questioning whether domination is truly the only path to security. That is encouraging, Barnes said. Change is difficult, especially for a culture as old as yours. But change is also necessary for growth. Kirith's scales rippled with what Barnes had learned was amusement. Elder Vothkar says that meeting you was like being hit with a revelation. He has become quite the advocate for human-style diplomacy. He even suggested that we establish peaceful contact with some of our former enemies. That would be remarkable, Barnes said. How did the other elders respond? With skepticism mostly, Kirith admitted, but also with curiosity. Your approach has worked so well with us that they cannot simply dismiss it. We are seeing real benefits from this alliance. Trade is flourishing. Our scientists are collaborating with yours. Our people are learning about human culture. It is all very new and sometimes uncomfortable, but it is also exciting. Barnes leaned back in his chair. I want to share something with you, Kirith. A piece of human philosophy that I think applies here. We have a saying. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. I do not understand, Kirith said. It means that we cannot change the past. The Zarkon have a history of conquest. Humanity has a history of war. We cannot undo those things. But we can choose what we do now. We can plant better seeds for the future. What we build today will grow into the world our children inherit. Kirith absorbed this. That is wise. We have a similar concept, though we express it differently. We say that a warrior's greatest battle is the one they choose not to fight. I like that, Barnes said. Our cultures are not as different as they first appeared. A communication alert chimed. Sarah Wright's voice came through the intercom. Ambassador Barnes, I apologize for interrupting. We have an urgent situation. A Zarkon military ship has encountered an unknown vessel in the border region. They are requesting human assistance with first contact protocols. Barnes and Kirith exchanged glances. This was significant. The Zarkon military was asking for help with diplomacy, rather than simply attacking. That represented a major shift in thinking. Tell them we will provide immediate assistance, Barnes said, and have the Meridian prepared for departure. We may need to travel there ourselves. He turned to Kirith. Would you like to come with me? This could be an opportunity to demonstrate the new approach. Yes, Kirith said immediately. I think that would be valuable. Let me contact my government and get authorization. 4 hours later, Barnes and Kirith stood on the bridge of a Zarkon cruiser, heading toward the border region. The Zarkon captain, a warrior named Drakthar, briefed them on the situation. We detected an unknown ship in our patrol area. Standard procedure would be to demand surrender or destroy it. But Elder Vothkar ordered us to try the human approach first, to offer contact before conflict. That is good, Barnes said. Tell me about the ship. What do we know? It is small, lightly armed. Similar to your Meridian, actually. It appears to be a scout or explorer. They have not responded to our hails yet, but they have not run either. They are just waiting. They are probably terrified, Kirith observed. They see a Zarkon warship and assume the worst. Exactly, Barnes agreed. Captain Drakthar, may I suggest something? Instead of hailing them from your warship, let me contact them from my shuttle, a smaller, less threatening vessel. We can explain that we come in peace and that the Zarkon are willing to talk. Drakthar's scales rippled with uncertainty. That seems risky for you? Perhaps, Barnes said with a smile. But as I once told Ambassador Kirith, fear is only useful if it changes the outcome. Let us try the diplomatic approach. What is the worst that can happen? Kirith laughed, a sound that still surprised the Zarkon crew. Captain Drekthar, you should know that when Ambassador Barnes asked that question, remarkable things tend to happen. I say we follow his advice. 20 minutes later, Barnes piloted a small shuttle toward the unknown vessel. Kirith sat in the co-pilot seat. She had insisted on coming with him. You know, she said as they approached. 6 months ago, I would have destroyed that ship without a second thought. Now I am trying to make friends with them. You have corrupted me, Ambassador Barnes. Barnes grinned. I prefer to think I have educated you. There is a difference. He opened a communication channel. Unknown vessel. This is Ambassador Gregory Barnes of Earth, accompanied by Ambassador Kirith of the Zarkon Empire. We noticed you are in Zarkon space. We would like to talk with you. We come in peace and friendship. Would you be willing to communicate with us? There was a long pause. Then a tentative voice responded. This is Captain Mira Cole of the exploration vessel Wanderer. Did you say you come in peace? With the Zarkon? I thought the Zarkon only knew how to conquer. Kirith leaned toward the communication unit. Captain Cole, that was true in the past. But things are changing. We are learning new ways. Would you be willing to come aboard our shuttle? We can explain everything. And we have excellent coffee. Barnes looked at Kirith with surprise and delight. She had just used his exact approach from their first meeting. She had offered hospitality instead of threats. She had mentioned coffee. Another pause. Then Captain Cole said, Coffee? With a Zarkon warrior? This I have to see. Very well, I will come aboard. But I am bringing my security officer. Excellent, Barnes said. We look forward to meeting you. As they waited for the other ship to dock with their shuttle, Kirith turned to Barnes. I understand now, she said quietly. I understand why you were not afraid when we first met. You were not gambling with your life. You were investing in a possible future. A future where meetings like this could happen. Where former enemies could become friends. Where coffee and conversation could replace weapons and war. Barnes nodded. Exactly. Every choice we make creates ripples. My choice to offer you friendship created ripples that reached here, to this moment. Your choice to accept that friendship created more ripples. Now Captain Cole gets to make a choice, and whatever she chooses will create more ripples. That is how the galaxy changes, one choice at a time. The airlock signaled an incoming connection. Captain Cole was about to board. Another first contact. Another opportunity to build bridges instead of walls. Kirith stood up, adjusting her diplomatic sash. She looked at Barnes and said, So, shall we go make a new friend? Barnes smiled. Yes, and remember, if she asks why we are not afraid, you know what to say. Kirith's scales rippled with amusement. Fear is only useful if it changes the outcome. Otherwise, it is just wasted energy. Better to offer coffee and see what happens.